Greetings and salutations, everyone. This is Random Fleming for Urban Myth, and today I wanted to go over one of our Mythunderstandings tutorials. Mythunderstandings is a concept between Mr. Maninity and I that we thought of that goes over some of the rules and some of the misconceptions of techniques or rules of the game of Myth from MegaCon Games. Often when we go into the forums, we find questions from novice players and some experienced players on what does this icon mean? Or how do I do this? Or have I been playing this wrong? So to that end, we thought we'd put together some of these Mythunderstandings videos to go over what the intent was behind MegaCon Games, and also at times illustrate some of the variants that fans for Myth have come up with. So without further ado, let's go into the hero card tutorial. And where better to start with the hero card tutorial than the anatomy of the card. So here is an example of Harvest of Bones for the soldier. This is a card that has a lot of information on it. So let's go over the steps, the different parts, step by step, as determined or as provided by the Route 2.0 rulebook. At the top of the card, you can see a white flame. This is the hero card rank. And there are many different cards that have different colored flames. The white colored flame is a base ability. This is a card of the hero deck, one of 25, that each hero out of the box has when they first start the game or start their career. Eventually, as heroes level up by defeating monsters or minions or story quests or titles or whatever it may be, they can at times choose to add in green flame cards, such as novice abilities. These novice abilities will then replace one of the white flame cards in the hero deck. These novice abilities are greater and better, or perhaps a duplicate of one of the better cards on the base hero deck. And this acts as leveling up the character. Now, notice that there are blue flame cards and orange flame cards to come out for Journeyman and the Master Legendary levels. And these will have abilities that are better than the green and the white flame cards. Also, when an agent is defeated, the agent can give or can lose his or her card to the hero. Also, there's a yellow flame card too, which are cards that are often given out at conventions by MegaCon Games. Now, the title of this card is the hero ability, the Harvest of Bones. The class icon of the crossed swords is the soldier, and the soldier uses this deck regardless of gender, if you have the alternate genders. So the male or female soldier can use this card from this deck. And as the character progresses, whether they have a different flame card or they go to either the light path or the dark path, this icon will still be representative of that class. On the left side, the movement type represents how a hero moves for that hero cycle, and there are certain abilities associated with each one. The open circle represents no movement, so if a hero does not move during the hero cycle, they get this ability, or this modifier, associated with this ability. In this case, for Harvest of Bones, they get an extra 10-sided die in their dice pool. Now, cautious movement is a half-open circle. And what this means is a hero has moved some spaces on the tile, but has not moved the full base movement value. So most heroes have a base of 2 MP, or 2 movement points, in a tile. If the hero moves only 1, they've moved cautious movement, and they get that modifier associated with it. In this case, the hero would get an extra fate die to the dice pool. Normal movement means that the hero has moved the full amount of the base movement, or 2 MP. And aggressive movement is movement associated with the tile, or associated with the hero on the tile, that is usually more than the base movement. So this could be using a hustle card, or using a sprint card, where the hero gets more movement points for that cycle. Now also notice that these are not cumulative. If the hero has moved 1 movement point on the tile, they don't get the no movement and the cautious movement together. They just get the cautious movement. This is one of the more important characteristics to recognize when using cards in a hero cycle. And we'll give an example of that later in this video. If another important item to look at, and characteristic, is the action type. There are actions, reactions, actions or reactions based on the will or the choice of the player, and interrupts. Interrupt cards are used only when the darkness cycle activates. Reaction cards, the hero can use as many as he or she chooses to, up to the maximum of 4 cards per hero cycle. And that can be seen on the hero board. However, heroes can only perform 1 action on their hero cycle. So as many reactions as you choose, interrupts only during the darkness cycle, and action cards, only 1 action per cycle. And again, given on the action board, you can only use up to 4 different cards per hero cycle. Again, we'll exemplify this later in an example in this video. On the bottom right corner, there's the action point cost. This diamond has different segments, up to 4, and the number of red segments signifies the cost of using this card. So in this case, there are 2 action points that will be used for Harvest of Bones. This will be captured on the darkness board on the AP meter. So by using this card, and 2 action points are added to the darkness meter, if the darkness meter hits 6 or goes beyond 6 after Harvest of Bones is utilized, then the darkness will activate. In the middle of the card, we have the damage and the range. For each square or each space immediately around the hero token, the soldier, the monsters will suffer 1 damage if they are hit. So if a hit successfully takes place. The card, the keywords are attack and melee. Attack means this card will provide damage or give damage to the enemy. Melee means it's going to be hand-to-hand combat or a weapon that utilizes hand-to-hand. And then finally we have the description of the ability. So in this case, attack 3 adjacent targets in a 90-degree arc, as shown by the diagram. If we have up to 2 rage that's been generated before using Harvest of Bones, we can change the 90-degree arc to a 180-degree arc. Now that's a lot of information. So how do these cards work together? Well, here's a hypothetical example. Let's say the hero, the soldier, is adjacent to a Mucker captain, and there are 5 other grubber minions on the tile. The soldier seems a little outnumbered, but when the soldier draws cards during the hero deck phase, he gets these 5. Harvest of Bones, Sprint, Devastate, Battle Roar, and I'll Take That. Now let's take a look at these in more detail. Harvest of Bones, Sprint, and Devastate are all action cards. You can see this by the icon on the bottom of the card. Remember, we can only use 1 per hero cycle. Conversely, Battle Roar is a reaction card. We can use that at any time. But I'll Take That is an interrupt card. And I'll Take That can only be used during the darkness cycle. Now, if you feel that you will be attacked by the darkness and it will activate during this hero cycle, you might want to reserve a space on your hero board for I'll Take That, or this parry, which allows you to ignore 1 enemy attack. However, if you don't feel that you're going to be attacked, you might want to focus on just the action and the reaction cards. So let's take a look at the action cards right now, and since we can only use 1 of them for this hero cycle, which one do we want to use? Let's go back to our example. I'm standing next to the Mucker. The soldier is there. Now the Mucker is a pretty formidable captain. The minions are there too, and by clearing out a few minions, that could be very helpful as well. So let's look at the Mucker. If we use the Devastate card, the Devastate card does 3 damage. It's massive. And it requires no movement to use that card since we're already standing next to the Mucker, which will give us a benefit. Conversely, if we want to eliminate 3 minions, we can move 1 space and do Harvest of Bones. That, without any rage, will allow us to attack these 3 minions, and again, we can get an extra fate die and a benefit by doing so. Now, Sprint is our final action. Do we need to sprint in this tile? And given the proximity of these monsters, and where the soldier is, chances are we're not going to need to sprint. So I'm going to decide to not use that card, this action, this turn. And while I'm not discarding it yet, I'm just going to place it face down to represent that it's not a consideration at this point. So which one do we do? Well, with Devastate is very attractive, and Harvest of Bones could be attractive too. Let's look at the action point costs. The action point cost for both these cards are the same. They're both 2 AP. So if we're close to the darkness cycle, triggering at AP of 6, this doesn't really matter. They're both going to do the same effect. So let's see. Well, with Devastate will give me -1 to target number, which means that to hit the Mucker, I would have to roll 1 less. The Mucker's defense is 7, and he has 3 vitality. So with Devastate and not moving, the defense would become 6. So if I roll a 6 or higher on my dice pool, I could eliminate the Mucker, because this ability does 3 damage, and the Mucker has 3 vitality. By defeating the Mucker, I can gain a treasure drop, and that's very attractive. Conversely, I could use Harvest of Bones. I can move 1 space, and then I could do a cautious movement, and then attack 3 minions. Now, by defeating 3 minions, I also get a treasure drop. However, the extra fate die doesn't really help me as far as my attacking. It doesn't lower the defense cost, or the defense to hit number. But by hitting and doing 1 damage for each of the 3 grubbers in that range, in that 90-degree arc, each one's only 1 vitality, so that actually could work out pretty well. Now, where does the fate die help? Well, if I have the Fireplace Poker equipped, it gives me an extra chance to roll a Rage on my fate die, which would reduce my threat after the attack. So I don't know what to do. And I leave that decision to you, but let's look at all the cards again. Remember, we have Battle Roar, and Battle Roar is a reaction. We can play that at any time. So Battle Roar allows us, each hero within the range, the tile, including myself, the soldier, will get -1 TN with every attack action. Well, again, against that Mucker, that would lower the defense of the Mucker to 6. And if we also incorporate the Devastate by not moving, it lowers the defense to 5, which is very attractive to attacking a Mucker. Conversely, we can also do the Harvest of Bones, which means we could attack those 3 grubbers with a to-hit number of 4 instead of 5 because of Battle Roar. That's also very attractive. So we could do either or. And interestingly, we can actually use Battle Roar for either situation, because you can see on Battle Roar's movement, whether we don't move or we do cautious movement, we still can use Battle Roar. Now let's use a slightly different example here. Through some mystical ability, perhaps an item or a title or a story quest environment, in this tile we're allowed to use 2 actions. Again, this wouldn't normally happen, but let's just say for sake of argument that we could. It would be interesting because we could do Battle Roar first, reducing the to hit for our attacks by 1. Then we could use Devastate to attack the Mucker as action number 1. And then we could move 1 space and do Harvest of Bones to attack the 3 minions, thereby eliminating 4 of the enemy from the tile. And the way we do this is we look, before we perform any of these actions, we look at the movement, the amount of movement the hero would do. And that's the modifier we use on all of the cards. So for example, we would use a total of 1 movement point, cautious movement, to perform all of these abilities. But this is problematic, because if you look at Devastate, we can't do Devastate with cautious movement. And so we're back to square one. We could do Battle Roar and then only Devastate without moving, or we could do Battle Roar and Harvest of Bones by moving 1, but you can't do both. So that's problematic. It's also important to note that for the interrupt cards, you don't move in those. It's assumed that we do not move, we are reacting to the darkness. And so all the interrupt cards at this level, the core game, have only no movement. And that's legal. There are no problems with that. It's assumed that during the Journeyman and beyond, the expansions, that certain heroes can do interrupts and actually move at the same time. And so that ends up being a little different. But note that when we look at our overall movement for our hero before we perform the actions or the abilities, that we look at the total movement points and then we use the modifiers for all of the cards for that movement type. Well, I hope that helps. I hope that explains some things. I look forward to getting your comments, your feedback. If I made any mistakes, please put them in the comments below. And I look forward to speaking with you again for Urban Myth.